Ever have to bike to places you've never been to, and your only guide is your phone's GPS? So now you're biking with your phone on your bar, having to look down every 10 seconds, praying you don't hit a pothole, a pedestrian, or even a. Oh! There's gotta be a better way. And so I built this attachment for the helmet that allows you to see your speed and GPS directions without ever having to take your eyes off the road or crash into a mailbox. It's a bike helmet heads up display, and yes, just like Iron Man, but broke and real. Before we can build anything, we need stuff. And this is the stuff. First up, the brain of the project, the Raspberry Pi Zero 2W. Simply put, it is a computer that fits in your hands, sips power, and somehow runs Linux. Next, power. This is just a basic USB power bank. Something's gotta power the Pi, so here it is. Then we've got the Neo 6M GPS module. I'm sure most of you guys know what GPS is, but basically this little guy communicates with satellites and is able to help determine your speed and location. Now this. So yeah, this is not cutting it. This is the Waveshare 2.42 inch 128 by 64 pixel OLED display module, and unlike the first screen I bought, this one actually lets you see your speed without having to use a magnifying glass. Next up, we have this acrylic sheet. When placed at the correct angle, it is able to reflect and project the screen at the bottom, acting as a heads-up display. And finally, a keyboard switch I found on my shelf. This humble switch will let me interact with the HUD, allowing me to hopefully switch modes, for example between speed and current time, or accidentally reboot the system. Who knows? Okay, so we begin by downloading and installing the Raspberry Pi OS. And just like any other computer, the Pi requires an operating system to run. This will allow us to run programs, connect to the internet, and control the hardware, which are all essential for this project. Since the Raspberry Pi is a computer, it also needs storage. That's what the micro SD card is for. It's where we'll install the operating system and store everything the Pi needs to run. For this project, I'm starting with the Raspberry Pi OS Lite, because at the time I thought it would be a faster and a better fit for what I was doing. But as you'll see later, that didn't quite turn out to be the case. After following many setup tutorials, I was ready to fire up the Pi for the first time. And earlier when I was setting up the OS, I set it so that, or I think, for the Pi to connect to my Wi-Fi on startup. To find out if that really happened, I had to scan the IP address of the Wi-Fi, which returned that the Pi is in fact not connected. So the first thing I did to debug this was grab an HDMI to mini HDMI adapter. That way I could just get my monitor's HDMI, plug the adapter into the Pi, connect the HDMI to the adapter, and see what is going on, including the Pi's IP address. After seeing the IP address, I went back to my main computer to try to connect to the IP address from my computer, which did not work. And so, it was about time I used the trusty ChatGPT. Following waiting a few seconds for it to spit out some answers, I realized that the IP address that was shown on the monitor wasn't even a real IP address. And after what felt like an eternity of scrolling through Amazon, drowning in research, and endless troubleshooting, I finally decided to settle on a different Raspberry Pi OS, the full OS. Now I was able to manually connect to the Wi-Fi straight from the Pi and obtain the IP address, allowing me to finally access the Pi from my computer. And after days of struggling, trying to find my goddamn IP address, there it is. Successfully logged in and ready to do the headless setup. After a few quick updates to make sure the Pi is up to date, I was ready to start installing the OLED display. There are two things I need to connect the display to the Pi: soldering wire and male header pins. In essence, I need the soldering wire to solder the header pins into the Pi, and I will use the jumper wires to connect between the two. You'll see. First, I need to break the header pins to the required amount for the Pi, which I struggled with at the start, but eventually got the hang of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not 7. Then, I have to solder the pins to the Pi. For this, I was using some cheap kit I got off Amazon a few years ago. After around 20 minutes of questionable soldering in the melting hot weather, I was done with the pins. Quite the questionable soldering job. And look at this. Oh boy. Hopefully this works. By following a few tutorials and looking at articles, I was able to connect the 7 cables from the display to the Pi. Soon after I was done wiring, I immediately got to coding so that I can get the display to actually display something. For that, the first try did not go so well, which I also forgot to record. But here's how the second attempt went. Okay, so ChatGPT pointed out that I made a typo, so I fixed that, hopefully, and let's see if this works now. Oh my god. Well, there we go. It's working. Now that I was done with the OLED, it was time to move on to the GPS module. And the initial setup was very straightforward, so here's a simple montage of how it went. Okay, so I am trying to run the script. There's my script over there, and why is it just not saying anything? My display's just, it's not working, and it's not telling me anything. I don't know what's going on. And just like that, we have something going on, finally. So now I am outside and I'm going to see if the GPS is actually working. Alright, everything's looking good. Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, the shutter speed. Alright, all you gotta know is, from my point of view, it works perfectly. And now, Raspberry Pi keyboard switch. Run the script. See if this whole thing works now. There's our speed. And there is our time. Wow. Wow, it works. Oh my god, it works. I didn't want my heads up display to just show the time and speed, because honestly, that would be way too boring. So I decided to take it a step further and integrate navigation into the system. At first, that sounded like an amazing idea, until I realized how complicated it actually was, especially since I had almost no experience with projects like this. But hey, it's 2025. We live in a world where we can learn just about anything with the right resources online. So naturally, I pretty much abused the internet to figure this part out. The first step in doing this was to gain access to Google Maps API library. This was essential because it allowed me to utilize the navigation and direction data from Google Maps. After following a series of steps straight from the internet, I was ready for the next step: creation of the Flask server, which is supposed to receive the origin and destination data from my phone and save it in a specific file in the Raspberry Pi so that I can then parse the data and to ultimately track my live location. I don't know how these work. I'm just gonna do them. By this point, I was months into this silly project and I really needed to get it done. Okay, what? So nothing's happening. Hello? Oh my god. So the GPS light is blinking, that means it is working. I ran the script for the OLED to start showing up, anything. Start showing up anything and it's showing up nothing. And after around 2 days of just troubleshooting, it's working. Finally freaking working. And finally, I just happened to have to return my friend's bike, which I borrowed, setting up the perfect scene for the final test. Okay, so the navigation so far seems to be working. Alright, let me approach the turn, see if the distance goes down. The distance values are moving. I'm just not sure how accurate it is, and I'm not sure if it's actually gonna swap to the next turn or not after I make this turn. The distance seems to be going down as I'm approaching the turn. Currently at like 400 meters far. Distance is going down. We're at around 300, 200 something, 240. Oh, this seems to be working pretty well so far. 169, 159, 146. Pretty good, pretty good. So I said it's supposed to change when I'm 30 meters within the turn. Oh, okay, there we go. The prompt has switched after I made the turn. I don't know if that was supposed to happen, but whatever. It is. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's saying the right stuff. It's working. I have a few more turns to make. See if it can handle those too. Okay, 42, and it's asking me to turn right. So I'm here. Turn right. All right, there we go. It works perfectly. Tyler told me to turn right when I was supposed to turn right. Turn left. Yep. Oh my god, so far it is just working absolutely perfectly, and I am almost at my friend's house. Another thing is structural rigidity. So the duct tape stuff, the acrylic and everything seems to be holding up pretty fine. My screen haven't been moving around. Nothing really has been moving around. So yeah, I think this is pretty good. Oh, it says navigation route complete. I don't remember asking ChatGPT to write that, but there it is. That's a nice touch. And I am at my friend's house, so I'll be giving the bike back.